Other injuries that we're looking at, and get ready, buckle up, because there's a lot of them. So we'll start with the quarterback position. Here's the injury board that we're looking at here. Got good news on Tom Brady. Did not practice on Wednesday, returned to practice on Thursday, so he is good to go. Tua Tagovailoa and Dak Prescott have been ruled out. Jameis Winston probably not going to play again, at least as of Wednesday. We'll find out what the practice reports are Thursday and Friday, but at this point, plan for Andy Dalton to be out there. Zach Wilson should be good to go. Mac Jones is a probable return after missing the Week 4 loss against the Packers. And Daniel Jones trying to play through his ankle injury. So far, the Giants have not added another quarterback yet, but Tyrod Taylor is still in the concussion protocol, so we'll find out there. But let's talk about a couple of these scenarios here. We'll start with the one in New Orleans, where we saw Andy Dalton play for Jameis Winston in London against Minnesota. If he starts again against Seattle, what does that mean for the options there? And as of Wednesday, Michael Thomas did not practice. Alvin Kamara is expected to play. Jarvis Landry was limited. Taysom Hill was limited. Chris Olave, thankfully, is fine. So break down, Heath, the Saints for me with Andy Dalton under center.
You're starting Alvin Kamara most likely as a low-end number 2 running back. You are starting Chris Olave no matter who's playing. But if Michael Thomas is not there, he might be a borderline number 1 wide receiver. And I think you look at Jarvis Landry as a boom-bust flex type option. And I wouldn't rule out Andy Dalton as a possible streaming option. I have him ranked ahead of Matthew Stafford. What I would say maybe is if he starts this game and he wins this game as we expect, we may not see Jameis Winston again, whether he's healthy or not.
That's a very fair point, and Dennis Allen was fielding questions about Jameis Winston's status prior to him sitting out the London game, and as you see Dalton's numbers here, he might have had a second touchdown. If good old Taysom Hill didn't steal one like he typically does. Dave with New England and Mac Jones comes back, it's another great matchup. This is a Detroit defense that has really been bad for their injury situation. Jacoby Myers right now is limited, so trying to get himself back on the field after being out the last couple games with knee injury. Any interest in the passing game here for the Patriots, knowing that, again, this Detroit defense could not stop Geno Smith and the Seahawks. And think about that, Geno Smith and the Seahawks.
Geno's been playing great, so it wasn't that big of a surprise that he couldn't do it, but Rashad Penny also did a lot of really good things in this game. And whether it's Bailey Zappi in his first start or Mac Jones coming back from a serious ankle or foot injury, whatever it is.
Ankle.
It is ankle. I think the Patriots are going to try and run the ball. So I'm really excited about their running backs this week. Not really feeling Devontae Parker unless you're desperate for a number 3 receiver.
All right, just keep an eye on Mac Jones' status there. And again, Andy Dalton, Mac Jones could be clearly options in Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues. And so might Daniel Jones, who's trying to play through this ankle injury, left the game last week and was not able to finish it, but trying to play in the game against London this week. And so, Heath, when you look at the Giants and their receiving core, they're getting healthier. Kadarius Toney practiced on a limited basis. Wan'Dale Robinson practiced on a limited basis. Richie James did not practice, and Kenny Golladay did not practice. So if Daniel Jones does play, and we get the 2 young receivers, Toney in his second year, Robinson in his rookie year, I know we're not going to start them, but they should be clearly rostered, right?
I did the same thing last week. I picked them up on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I held them until we got to game time. They weren't playing. I dropped them for somebody else who might go off during the day on Sunday. I want to do that again. They should both be rostered this week. But even if I roster them, even if Daniel Jones starts, even if Dave starts or you start, it's Saquon Barkley and no other Giants in your starting lineup this week.
Yes,
unquestionable.
And that's for the 10-team, 12-team leagues. Some deeper leagues, you might have some choices. I know we were recommending Richie James as a potential streaming option. If you get Toney or Robinson playing on Sunday, they might be streaming options in some deeper leagues. We'd just like to see those kids play at this point and see what they could do moving forward. Let's go now to the running back injuries, and we're going to build to a lot bigger injury situations when we get to wide receivers. But you know the situation in Indianapolis without Taylor. At this point, we are not expecting DeAndre Swift or David Montgomery. J.K. Dobbins should be fine. He had the same injury last week, did not practice on Wednesday, played very well. We'll see how he does again. Alvin Kamara expected to go at this point, same with Breece Hall, and Rashad Penny, hopefully he will be fine. I saw different reports. The actual injury report said he was limited. I saw one report that said he did not practice, so hopefully he will be fine coming off, as Dave alluded to, that big game against Detroit. Much tougher matchup, though, for him this week as he takes on the Saints. So let's just revisit the story that we had last week and how this carries over to this week with the situation in Detroit and Chicago. Dave, Jamal Williams is what without DeAndre Swift, likely out again against the Patriots?
Very close to a top 12 fantasy running back. You saw the upside last week. The Patriots haven't allowed a touchdown to a running back this season, but they are giving up 4.5 yards per carry. Williams is absolutely going to be in the mix for Detroit.
And as you see, we all have him ranked as at least the top 12 running back. Sportsline a little bit lower as the 16th ranked running back, but basically a must-start guy. Heath is the same thing with Khalil Herbert, who did not live up to the expectations in terms of his fantasy production, but certainly lived up to the expectations with his workload.
Yeah, and I just think we're going to see that again. We're going to see 20-plus touches. I don't think this Vikings defense is anything special. He is going to be a must-start running back this week, and he'll deliver better results than he did last week.
Hopefully that's the case. Was amazing 2 games ago when he stepped in for David Montgomery when he was hurt against the Texans. Not as high of a ceiling in terms of his performance against the Giants, and we'll see how he does this week against the Vikings. All right, here we go. wide receiver injuries. Let's start with the first board of injuries. There's a lot of them. So here's the first list of injuries that we're dealing with here. These are just the guys that did not practice on Wednesday. Forget about the guys that were limited. This is just did not practice on Wednesday. So Keenan Allen, we don't know if he's going to return from his hamstring injury. Jalen Waddle should be okay, but something to monitor there. Marquise Brown was more of a walkthrough for the Cardinals. He's expected to be fine. Keep an eye on that situation. Michael Thomas, probably not going to go again. Just keep an eye on that. Same thing with Amon-Ra St. Brown. We do hope Josh Reynolds plays, though, for the Lions. DJ Chark probably going to be out again. Rashad Bateman probably going to be out again. For Curtis Samuel, we'll find out what his status is. John Dotson's expected to be out. Traylon Burks expected to be out. Hopefully Isaiah McKenzie will play. And again, Richie James will find out if he makes the flight to London. That will certainly determine if he's going to play as well. So let's talk about a couple of these scenarios before we even move on to the limited receivers here. So we'll revisit the story with the Chargers. Keenan Allen's been battling his hamstring injury since week 1. Now, Josh Palmer is also limited in practice on Wednesday, so he's going to be probably considered questionable. But just break down the Chargers receiving core once again. Mike Williams, Gerald Everett, factor in Josh Palmer, and if they're both out in terms of Allen and Palmer, any interest in DeAndre Carter?
A little bit of interest. If I'm desperate for help at wide receiver, you could pick him up and use him. I'd like him better in DFS, where I know it's just going to be a one-week thing. But Gerald Everett becomes a must-start fantasy tight end, and Mike Williams becomes an absolute stud.
In terms of the situation in Detroit, again, Heath, we're expecting Josh Reynolds to play. There's obviously the scenario if he doesn't play, maybe Khalif Raymond, Quintus Cephas, who knows what's happening with those guys. A lot for TJ Hawkinson, although he did not practice on Wednesday as well. It was no St. Brown, no Chark, no Reynolds, no Hawkinson. Why would even Jared Goff show up at this point? But if Josh Reynolds goes as expected, he's what for this week taking on the Patriots?
High-end number 3 wide receiver. Don't think he'll do quite as well next week just because it's a more difficult matchup against the Patriots. But I do think that you're probably starting him over guys that you have been starting. I'd certainly start him over Amari Cooper, over Gabe Davis, over DJ Moore.
And Hawkinson must start tight end clearly after just a record-breaking performance last week against Seattle. Just quickly, if there is no Bateman, Devin Duvernay is a
bench receiver in PPR.
Okay, I
don't really want to use him.
I can see him as a touchdown guy against the Bengals, but touchdown only. Robert Woods is what without Traylon Burks there?
I've still got him as a number 3 wide receiver. There just hasn't been enough pass volume in this Titans offense. Even if you're getting a fourth of the targets, that's like 6 targets right now, the way the Titans are throwing the ball.
Back-to-back games of at least 12 PPR points for Robert Woods, so hopefully building towards something as he's making his way back from last year's torn ACL. All right, here we go. Wide receiver injury board number 2. These are the guys who were limited in practice on Wednesday. We hope all of these guys are going to be out there, but clearly that's not necessarily the case. So T. Higgins is expected to play. The 3 Buccaneers are expected to play. Alan Lazard, same thing. Now, Renfrow coming back after missing last week's game with the concussion would matter because that would probably take Mac Hollins off the table as a streaming option and might impact Josh Jacobs in terms of his reception total that we've seen the last couple of games. Jacoby Myers also working his way back. Zay Jones missed last week's game. He would be a nice sleeper if he does play this week against the Texans. And again, we told you about Josh Palmer and the Giants guys. So let's talk a little bit more here quickly on Renfrow. Is he in the number 3 receiver conversation like he was probably drafted to be, knowing that this could be a shootout and what the Chiefs secondary has allowed to receivers over the last several weeks?
Absolutely. If he's on the field, he's going to be a nice short area target. I don't like him as much in non or half PPR, Jamie, because it's those catches that really matter with Renfrow. But the Raiders are going to have to put the ball in the air. Obviously, that's going to impact the run game. Renfrow might not make my top 36, so technically not a number 3 receiver, but still somebody that I wouldn't have a problem starting in full PPR leagues.
Zay Jones, prior to last week, was someone we were saying to add. He was coming off an amazing game, 24 PPR points in week 3, and that was 2 of 3 games where he had at least 12 PPR points. He misses the game last week against Philadelphia. Jamal Agnew comes in and scores 2 touchdowns. So if Jones plays, he's what? And if Jones is out, Jamal Agnew is what?
I'm not going to trust Jamal Agnew, so we'll get that off the table first. If Jones plays, he is in that same group of receivers like Dave said with Hunter Renfrow. He is going number 4 wide receiver, but we really view him as a number 3. There's just more than 36 wide receivers you want to view as that. A boom bust number 3.
And he is available in more than 50% of leagues on CBSSports.com. You might want to stash him now because he's starting to make some plays. And I was listening to an interview with one of the Jaguars beat writers who said the one thing that's missing consistently for the Jaguars offense right now is the downfield throws. That's what Zay Jones will help this team with, so hopefully he gets back on the field and can open some things up for Trevor Lawrence. All right, now the third list of wide receiver board is the guys who have sneezed on Wednesday, and we'll tell you what their status is. No, let's move on to the tight ends and the guys who are dealing with injuries there. Kyle Pitts popped up on the injury report dealing with a hamstring problem, did not practice. Hawkinson, we told you, is expected to play. Njoku was more of a rest day, but just something to keep an eye on there with his knee situation. Dawson Knox is now back-to-back weeks. Last week was a back injury. This week it's a foot injury, something to keep an eye on there. Cameron Brate, Taysom Hill, Hayden Hurst, some streaming options if you need them. Just keep an eye on their status if you are, in fact, planning to play them. But Heath, with Kyle Pitts, we know the production has not been there. Only one game with double digits in PPR points. It was week 3. He has been a largely disappointing fantasy option after drafting him in the 3rd round. Does the injury maybe alleviate the fantasy manager's concerns and say, if he doesn't play, I don't have to play him? But where are we at with Kyle Pitts right now?
He's a low-end number 1 or high-end number 2 tight end, and it's one of those situations where I have guys ranked ahead of him who, 9 of them, who were drafted after him or not drafted at all. If you have one of those guys on your roster, Tyler Higbee, Gerald Everett, Tyler Conklin, even for me, already on your roster, I would start them over Kyle Pitts. I'm not cutting somebody else to pick up one of those guys except for Everett to start, and Higbee, but he's not available, to start over Pitts.
Well, in some 10-team leagues, I actually picked up Higbee last night in a 10-team league, so I understand that there are some fantasy managers that had George Kittle or Dalton Schultz maybe, and they cut Higbee to move on for another roster spot. So you might see some of those transactions happening, especially in non-PPR leagues. But yeah, it's tough to trust Kyle Pitts right now.